Our first speaker of the day has served on the board of directors for the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center. That is a group of financial companies that share information about the information security attacks, breaches, things that they see going on that they feel is beneficial to share. John helped get that started a few years ago, and it is very beneficial. We get lots of emails from different people in the industry every day. He also recently served on the board of advisors for the Payment Card Industry Security Standards Council. You know, the ones we love to hate, PCI Council. He's also held information security leadership roles in various companies, including Convergys, which was Intervoice, Alcatel-Lucent, which was Alcatel and previously DSC, where he spent several years in Antwerp and in Paris. I say playing around, boondoggling, but he claims he was actually doing some work there. Outside of the corporate world, he's also an adjunct professor at the University of Dallas, where he teaches courses on legal and compliance implications of security, which he co-founded with Dr. John Nugent. In his spare time, he enjoys hobbies such as shooting, off-roading in his recently purchased Jeep, and running. He is the Chief Security Officer of Heartland Payment Systems. He leads the company's security and IT compliance and information security teams. One other thing about John that a few people know is in between jobs, he did a little bit of consulting work and helped the government design some shape charges for a special project. So you need anything blown up, you might talk to John. He can help you out. So please help me welcome John South, CSO of Heartland Payment Systems. And his topic today is, are we smarter than a fifth grader?
So, hi guys. So my name is John South. As Bill said, I've done a lot of weird things in my life. And I guess that's what led me up to here. But it's Friday morning. You're not at work. And we need to get a little bit more. I'm going to make you all get up and do jumping jacks here in a minute if you don't liven up a bit. Besides that, my jokes are bad. So, all right. Are we smarter than a fifth grader? So I thought we'd start off a little bit and have a little bit of fun at some people's expense. It's always the best kind of fun. So I'd like to, you know how the program works, right? You get somebody up, you start asking them a bunch of questions, which they should have known when they were in the fifth grade. And Don's over here going, I don't know if I want to volunteer for this. So we'll ask a few questions and let's just see where it goes from there. And we'll lead into the rest of the program from there. So I solicited volunteers, sort of. Oh, it's a good game. So I solicited volunteers, and so for the first contestant, Dr. Christian Nielsen, I figured we'd get the smartest guy in the room, right? Anybody with a doctor title's got to be the smartest guy in the room, so we'll pick him. And of course on the program you have a fifth grader who is the classmate. Sorry, Don, is the classmate of the victim, and so I selected another brilliant young fellow, Don No, who works for me. And Don will be his reference guide. So just in case you need some help. Now, the first thing, Don, you do not have the internet anywhere near you, do you? Okay. Okay. All right, because Don will cheat. I know Don. Okay, so the first topic, difficult words that start with the letter A. All right? Okay, Christian, how's your vocabulary? Feeling good? A?
Acceptable.
Okay. I'm telling the jokes here. Okay, so if I can figure out which button I'm supposed to hit. Okay, in the Euclidean space, which of the following is an angle?
A.
A, okay. All right, give him a hand. You got the first one right. All right. Unlike the show, you get no money, but that's all right. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see what your next topic is. Oh, difficult words that start with A. Lucky you. All right, let's see where you go this time. What is an Arduino? You can use your classmate to help if you need that. Well, wait a minute. I have to put these things up. If you don't have to make up your answers, I got them for you here. Well, wait a minute. I got to read them. It's not as much fun if you don't read them. So, a small computer on a board that can be used to experiment with circuits and to prototype IoT devices. A type of Italian pasta that's often cut in the shape of the letter R. Say Arduino. An Italian contraction meaning arduous journey. The name associated with the flat plains between the mountains around Lago di Gardo, northwest of Milan. I had to look that up, so at least pick it. All right, so which one is your selection?
It would have to be
Letter A. All right, let's give him a hand. That's correct. All right, thank you, Christian. Okay, what's your next topic? Difficult words that start with A. All right. Took a while to find all these, too. Define atlatl. You could use your classmate. An amulet typically of lapis lazuli that's associated with the god Osiris. A throwing spear system used by ancient Native Americans. The Incan god of war often represented as a thunderbolt. A species of turtle that lived during the Jurassic period growing to the size of a Volkswagen Beetle.
Okay, in talking to my compatriot here, it's B.
It is B. You're right. All right. Everybody give him a hand. Now, there's a funny story about this, and there's the reason why he's the classmate. So we're standing at Chimney Rock in Colorado, right? And then the park ranger says, we have some time to kill before the tour, so I got an atlatl here, and I want you guys to play with it. And he said, kids that are in the 5th grade can pick this up and throw it, and it'll hit the target every time. Don and I, on the other hand, we hit everything but the target. Luckily, wives and children were behind us, but we hit the ground, we hit trees, we missed the entire course, and we starved that day. But all right, so very good, you got that one. So let's see what your next topic is. Difficult words that start with the letter A. All right, you're on a roll, Christian. You can use your classmate. Define axolotl. An Aztec word for a small hand weapon made from an early amalgam of copper and tin believed to be part of the sacrificial practices against captured enemy. A vegetable grown in ancient Mexico that is a predecessor to the modern tomato. A type of salamander that never progresses past its larval stage where their gills are prevalent outside of their bodies. An organic carbon chain that is interpreted by our sense of smell as the odor of dirty socks.
Well, this is a tough one. I think I'm going to have to guess. I would.
Well, you can use your classmate.
Well,
I have to guess too.
We're going to guess A.
A, an Aztec word for a small hand weapon. You know, luckily there's no money on the line. That's not it. Any help from the audience? C is right. Man, you guys know what that is. All right. It is C. It is a salamander that never progresses past its larval stage. Really strange looking animals, but. All right, next topic. Difficult words that begin with the letter A. This one has a little bit more of a build-up before you can give your answer. All right, you work through the budget season with your team to develop a thorough business case justifying the addition of 10 new headcount. You present that case to your CIO and the board, and to your surprise, they approve the plan. A is not approved in this case. You contact both your internal and external recruiters. They feel confident they can find a good number of qualified candidates in the DFW area who have demonstrable security experience. Yeah. The recruiters send you a number of candidates, most of whom meet the barest minimum of your security job requirements. After interviewing them and determining their salary demands, you find A, the number of candidates really stretch their qualifications to match the buzzwords in your job description. I've never seen that happen. Some of the candidates hold CISSP, CISSA, and CISM credentials, but when questioned on the details of their security strategy, they know few of the details of how that strategy was implemented. Never seen that before either. When you find a candidate with the least minimum requirements, they price themselves at a salary rate that's 50% above the average DFW market. That I've seen a lot. And you find yourself feeling very frustrated. So your question, what is the first A word that emanates from your lips? And I want to remind you that this is a family show, so.
All of the above.
All of the above. Actually, somewhere I lost my slide, but it was ARG. Anyway, all right. So thank you guys. Oh, wait. Hey, I was thinking that you can't go away empty-handed. Oh. So I did. You can't have that. I hope that's not going to bang around when I set it down. Okay. However, I didn't have a lot of time, so I just kind of went through the pantry. So you get a choice between a can of DeMonte fresh cut sliced beets, a bar of Newman's Own Organics orange dark chocolate,
I'll get that.
another bar of Newman's Orange.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
I get to keep the beets. All right. So I was sitting there thinking, first of all, what to talk about. And I looked at the agenda, and Bill said, hey, look at the agenda, and you can see what all kinds of things people are talking about here. So I could talk for the next couple of days on vulnerability management and why we're failing and how we might do it better. But you got some people talking today and tomorrow who probably know a lot more about vulnerability management than I do. And they'll have some good ideas that you can talk about. So I wrote that one off. I figured, yeah, you'll get enough of that. And then I thought about the next big failing in most companies, which is patching. How many here have everything in their systems completely patched? And don't be shy. Okay. So obviously that could be a good target to talk about. Wrote that one off too, because I think there's somebody talking about patching. If not, they should be. Then I thought, logging. Everybody does logging, right? So if you look at the, and I think there's an FBI agent or somebody from the government who'll be coming, and I have to leave before it finds out the warrants are still open. But anyway, and they'll be talking about, and hopefully talking about things that if you look at breaches that take place, almost every breach you can find something in the logs, right? So everybody's got a perfect logging scheme, right? Mm-hmm. All right, then there's encryption of data at rest and on the move. Well, the neat thing about that is we know all of our data flows. We know where all the data is, and we know where it's coming from. When it enters our systems, we encrypt it right away, right? And then we encrypt it when it sits at rest. And then we unencrypt it because we send it to the rest of the world because they don't know what they're doing with it anyway, except selling it on the open market. So I thought about, well, I could talk for a couple of hours on encryption. But it's Friday morning, you guys just got up, and after a couple of hours of encryption algorithms, it gets a little boring. So we'll leave that. But all of that kind of falls under the guise of Security 101. And we all have to look at that as security people. This is the way we have to, at a minimum, run our businesses, our academic institutions, government. And government does a great job of all of these. Sorry, Shouldn't say things like that. By the way, is anybody from the government? I'm sorry. The other question I should have asked before I started talking, is anybody here a lawyer or represent a legal firm? Just in case. I have a tendency, anyway. Come on, there we go. So, but what's the assumption that we make in every one of those things? Whether it's vulnerability management, whether it's patching, logging, or even encryption at rest. There's one assumption that we have to make. Well, and that's a very good assumption. And that's a very good starting point. But who's going to find out what our assets are? What happens if I don't have enough people to do it? How many of here have everybody they need in their business to do security? Again, no hands. You guys are either very shy or very tired, one of the two. I know the show went a little long, but okay. So that's the question. What happens if I don't have enough bodies? And I started thinking, and I'll talk about a couple of things with another fellow that you should know pretty well in the industry in a few minutes. But this is a problem, especially in the DFW area, is making sure that you have enough security people to do the job. This is actually, notice how the slide finally says, hey, ARG, okay. There we go. Good slide deck, John. Okay. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that by 2020, there'll be 1.4 million job openings in IT. Think about that. You know what that number means? We could hire every H1 in the school system. We could hire every American student graduating from the school system and not even come close to filling that number. That's how drastic that is. There's only 400,000 computer science graduates, the necessary skills to fill those positions. So the other, whatever that is, 1 million people. Where are we going to come up with 1 million people? A company called 415 Research showed that 34.5% of security managers cited lack of experience for the reason they're not hiring people. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you waited until you had the absolute match on your resume or on your job requirements, you never find anybody. We'll talk about that in a little bit. In DFW, for some security specialists, there aren't even poorly qualified candidates for some of those positions. So you take positions like application security specialists or analysts. Try finding one. You know why they're hard to find? Because they know they're valuable in the industry and they're very expensive. And once they get into a position, they don't have to move. And this is the number as of the 29th when I put the slides together. There have been 577 breaches so far this year. 577. Not all those reached the news. 155 million records stolen. This is the part that's really scary, all right? We're seeing an increased interest on the part of the CIO and senior executives to increase their security investments. 76% were concerned about cybersecurity threats. What were the other 24% thinking? Not going to hit us. That's other people. That's called the red light running syndrome. As long as you're not the guy that gets hit in the intersection, it's like, so what? Here's the other thing. BDO, LLP reported that 67% of the CEOs dedicated money to cybersecurity. Dedicated money to cybersecurity. What do the other 33% do? I don't know. I don't know what they do with it. This will scare you. So out of those 67%, This was 100 CEOs, so math's easy for you guys. At least it is for me. Okay. 90% purchased new security tools, so that's 90 of the CEOs. That's cool. 72% created a formal response plan. 72%? Shouldn't it be 100%? Well, see, the problem is, you just jump down to the last one. 30% hired a chief security officer. No wonder they don't have an incident response plan. They're just getting around to hiring a security person. And you think this is current statistics, guys. This is not like from 1980. There are companies that still don't have security professionals running in their companies. And these are also not small companies too, by the way. 90% increase in the demand for cybersecurity professionals. So we've had a 90% increase in demand for security professionals, and it's 3 times the growth rate of the field itself. Which means every day that we go through this process, we build that deficit even higher. And people can't find enough security people for the changes. And if you look at, just take a second to step back and think about, for those of you who have been, how many have been in the security field for more than 5 years? Dang. Less than 5 years? Don't know why you're here at the conference? You thought this, you saw the food was free and you decided you wander in? So somehow that didn't add up. In my mind, I would have thought that one would have been the complement of the other. But if you think back 5 years, how different the security industry was. Think back 10 years ago, how different it was. I think back when I started, Edison asked me if I wanted to try something with electricity. But come on, guys, it's Friday morning, but you work with me. When I started, the security industry was make sure that nobody gets the data out of the database. That was it. It's an easy job. All I had to do was make sure the permissions on the database were secure, and I could sit back and reap all that big money. Wasn't that big then. But nowadays, look at what we got to do. If you look at how we have to put our teams together, imagine a company that only has 1, 2, or 3, or 4 people, and I'm sure there's many of you out there, how difficult that is in a fairly good-sized company to manage security. Also, we have things like, where do these jobs report to? So you have some reporting to the CIO. How many report to a CIO? Nobody? Cool. CFO? Nobody? Nobody reports to anybody? You guys, that's a pretty cool job. I like that. Come work for you guys. Anyway. All right, so the high job rate has directly impacted universities. So here's the interesting thing. If you look at it, there's 744 offerings from certificates to PhDs throughout the country right now. Collin College has things, UTD has things, University of Dallas has things, UNT has things, SMU has things. They all offer something. But this is kind of, I'm afraid to push something that would actually light this up. But so the U.S. News and World Report is showing that information security analyst is like the 8th best job that you can have right now. So why aren't the schools teeming with people that want to become information security analysts? Now, I asked my nephew one time, just a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact, if he had picked a major in college. He said, yep, business. I said, why business? No, I don't one of the sciences. He looked at me with this quizzical look. He said, why would I want to work hard? Couldn't fault the logic. But anyway, but there's been a growth rate of 36% in just those types of positions alone. But those numbers concern me. And if you think about what that means, is we've got we've got a lot of capability to train people, but nobody's filling those slots. Now, if you come to Collin College, I'm sure the classes are full. If you go to any of the other colleges, I'm sure those classes meet and they have people. But the demand level of that is still so low that you're not getting, the pipeline itself is not filling up. People don't grow up in 5th grade thinking, I want to be a security analyst. I sure didn't. I had no idea I'd be up as a security analyst. Think about when you were in 5th grade. What were you thinking of being? I wanted to be a race car driver, but that was just me. That didn't work out. And it takes but one of the problems with all the academic institutions is it takes a very long time to get a curriculum and get a program set up. So if you look at, if you look at a typical institution, what they have to do is, first of all, you have to design a program. You have to give its intent. You got to go to the deans. The deans have to agree that in philosophy of the program looks pretty good. Then you got to start looking for professors. You got to start looking for, you have to develop curricula. You have to you have to find where you're going to meet, where the class is going to be. They've got to work it into the catalog, which is usually 2 or 3 years in advance. And then you got to schedule everything out and advertise for students. So you're looking, even if I made the decision today to start a new program in an institution, you're looking at a 2 to 3, 4 year spin-up cycle. That means kids that are just going into high school are our potential target. The most important one is you have to change culture. Some academic institutions, and one that I know in particular, I offered to have some of my security analysts run some vulnerability testing against the academic institution, and was told in no uncertain terms, no. So it makes you wonder, what do I have to do to change that culture to make that important to a university? Not only as a class, but also as an underlying philosophy. If you know anything about universities and computing in universities, being open is very much the philosophy. We want to make sure that everybody can get to everything all the time, and that our professors in particular can get to any research that they want to research. So it's a pretty difficult scenario. Does anybody here do CSO work for a university? If you do, you should be going straight here for sainthood, because it's a difficult job. But we have a mathematical statement that we need to rationalize. So if we want to have a growth rate in the profession that is less than or equal to the numbers of students graduating with security degrees, which is less than or equal to the number of students graduating with science and technology degrees. So, in other words, for us to be able to meet the growth rate of our profession, we have to get more students involved in science and technology at a very early age. If we can't do that, we can't fill our pipeline. Now, the other alternative is, and I'll talk about this in a bit, the other alternative is you have to then look for very innovative ways of taking people who aren't trained in the sciences to make them security people. And so that's another alternative path. But as I say here, the number of students graduating with science degrees is anemic at best. How many PhD students do you think there are in the system? US-born PhD students are in the system today. All academic institutions. 500. Now, anybody that goes around a PhD program knows that there are a lot of students in a PhD program, but most of them are not US-born. So what are we doing in school? Partying? No, that's college. But the overall quality of our students is also abysmal. And that's the problem that we're having. I'll talk I can talk ad nauseum about what science education in the elementary and middle schools is like. But I'm surprised that kids are just not bored out of their ever-living gourds in middle school with eighth grade, 7th grade and 8th grade science. There are teachers in the 8th grade. This is how you teach science. You ready? Here's a worksheet. Do it. Hi, I gave the kids a worksheet. Honestly, this happened in a classroom here in Plano. The teacher would be on the phone talking while the students do worksheets. Period. For an entire year. What do you think they learned? Probably how to fill out worksheets. So when it comes time to fill out an application, they should be pretty good. Unless, of course, they couldn't get their name on the sheet. I don't know. So some statistics. Our process is moving backwards, not forwards. 44% of U.S. high school graduates are ready for college-level math. 44%. Now, not everybody's meant to go to college. In spite of what the educational philosophy of the U.S. is, not everybody is meant to go to college. So maybe 44% is right. I don't know. But it seems awfully low to me. 36% are ready for college-level science. And as long as when they can find a college that only does worksheets, they're going to be great. 19.5% of advanced placement test takers in the class of 2012 earned a qualifying score on an AP exam. 19.5%. That's abysmal. 38% of students in higher education who start with a STEM major do not graduate with one. So the dropout rate is tremendous. Now, either that means they're not qualified for STEM, and they shouldn't have been there to begin with, or the program's too hard and they just gave up, or they just lost interest in it. Well, I tired that one out, huh? Why are they so abysmal? Why are these rates like that? What is it in the U.S. educational system that makes this so bad? Part of it is because we've lowered our educational system to the lowest common denominator. Catch this. I would have given my right arm if they'd have done this when I was in school. You flunk a test, you get to take it again. Damn. I would have, and the worst you can get when you take it again is 70. Man, all those D's would have been gone. Miss Fresh in Latin class, that would have been nothing. That wouldn't have been the nightmare I have today. No, it would have been great, 70%. I get to take a test twice. It's the same test too, most cases. So if you got really good short-term memory, you can ace that course. More importantly, we try to, like I said, the philosophy that we have in the U.S. is no kid is left behind, which is great. I think that it's very important that we make sure that everybody has a chance. But the problem is when we lower the educational system down to that level, that the people who could achieve more don't. You know what they do in class while they're waiting for the other students to catch up? I don't know how you're going to do that. But they're bored. They're not doing anything. And not enough of them get a chance to go to gifted students programs. And we don't have gifted student programs big enough to hold all of them. So But most importantly, we make science boring. Memorize this chemical equation or this mathematical theorem. That turns kids off. So, you know, my dad was a cool guy because he was a great engineer. And I sat there one day and I said, how can you remember all this stuff? He looked at me and said, remember it? I just remember what book it was in. And that's the way it is. You don't need to memorize that stuff. What turns kids on? Doing stuff. You know, if we're talking about rocket science, if we're talking about inertia, we're talking about Newton's laws, let's go out and blow rockets up. They'll remember those lessons the rest of their life. But if I sit and talk about Newton's law of motion, most of them are thinking about what they're going to do on Friday night. I don't know, why is it important to really turn kids on to STEM subjects in as early as elementary school, middle school at the latest? Well, let me show you an example. This is kind of a cool example because I'm kind of an astronomy geek. This is the Cassini spacecraft. Does anybody remember this one? Launched this little puppy back in 1997. Its mission was to go to Saturn with a little payload. In fact, you can see it right here, the Huygens Titan probe. Which was going to go down to Titan. Now, there's a bunch of us in here who used to work for Alcatel, and we were kind of happy because the Alcatel space unit actually was part of the European space unit, and they actually made the Huygens probe. But that was the project. It was a pretty neat project. It launched in October 15th, 1997, and it entered orbit around Saturn on July 1st, 2004. Not too bad, 7-year journey to get to Saturn. Wonderful stuff. If you've seen, go out and look at the images of what Cassini's taken of the Saturnian rings, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful device. December 25th, 2004, Huygens was separated from Cassini and landed on Titan. I don't know if you guys remember the pictures of that. If this thing came down and landed right on the edge of one of the methane lakes, and beautiful, beautiful pictures. We got to see for the very first time one of the lunar objects that goes around Saturn. Something that no human has ever seen in their life. Pretty cool subject. Let me introduce you to a couple of guys. Marco Mastrogiuseppe and Jason Hofgartner. They're both researchers and PhD. One has a PhD and the other's a PhD student at Colgate. And God, I hope I can figure out how to do this. On the Cassini spacecraft, you can see there's a little radar bay there. Okay, and what they use radar for, whether it's the Cassini or, and it's kind of interesting. If you look at spacecraft that go out around various objects in space, there's a common set of packages. The high and low gain antennas, the radar units, radio systems and things like that, communications. They're basically they're pretty much the same thing. But on the Cassini spacecraft, this radar bay was meant to do one thing, which was as it would pass around Titan or whatever it would go around, was to bounce radar signals off of the ground. And then, of course, if I bounce a radar signal off and it comes back up, I measure the time and I can tell what the altitude is of the ground that I'm above. So I can actually map out the altitude of the particular probe, or the particular subject that I'm looking at. Well, these two young fellows figured out something else. Unlike water, where if I bounce a radar signal down on water, what happens? It can only penetrate about a centimeter and then it comes back up again. So it gives me no real information. But if I bounce a radar signal down through a methane lake, methane is about 300 times more transparent to a radar signal, so it can go all the way down. I can measure the depth of the that was pretty cool. Measure the depth, I want to do it again, of the methane lakes. That was pretty cool stuff. So now not only do we know the altitude of Titan and all of its geographic surfaces, we now know that some of those methane lakes go down as deep as 500 feet. The other guy, that was Marco's work. Jason was looking at some very small sections around one of the methane lakes, and he said, the islands on that lake keep disappearing. He looked at a series of photographs, and these islands disappeared. So he said to Marco, let's get JPL to dedicate a few more circuits around Titan for us, and let's look at those islands again. And what they figured out, and they think, is that there's either a tidal component to the methane lakes, or that there's gusts of wind or something that move that water, or that methane up over the islands, and they disappear. So they call them the magic islands, but they just disappear and come back and everything. The cool thing about these two guys, they were both in middle school when Cassini was launched. Middle school. Imagine if they hadn't been interested in going into astrophysics. Now, how many fifth graders can even spell astrophysics, let alone go into it? But they did. So what we have is an educational system that's restrained, antiquated. One of the problems with it, in fact, in Texas, here's what's cool about Texas, right? Science teacher comes in, all fresh. I'm going to do all kinds of neat things with the student. Here's your curriculum. Don't vary from it. And you start looking at it, and it's like, I got to teach this. There's no time to do anything. So we have a restrained system that's antiquated. Unfortunately, we have a lot of science teachers who really aren't science teachers. They just that was the thing they got assigned to. But time, curriculum restrictions, and undertrained teachers. So enter Clifford Stoll. Does anybody know who Clifford Stoll is? Besides looking like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. It does, John. It goes back to our early days when we could walk without walkers. So nobody knows who Clifford Stoll is. Yeah, you're a straight man. You know where I'm going with this. The cuckoo's egg, yes. I always wondered, knowing Cliff, whether he was talking about himself or the incident. Very nice man, though. He's a very nice man. He is a preeminent astrophysicist, not just the guy who actually figured out that KGB, for some reason, wanted into their labs. But one of the things that people don't know about Cliff Stoll is that he volunteers as an 8th grade science teacher. Could you imagine walking into an 8th grade class with him? I just want to see her do it again. But that was, now, you have to go, there's a TED Talk that he does that you have to go watch. And there's only one out there, I think, on him. Let's just say his classes would be bizarre. He bounces. Can't get rid of that. He bounces across the stage. He jumps up and down, but he says, you could see it in his enthusiasm. In fact, in the TED Talk, he'll do a measurement of the speed of sound. Sets it up, does it, measures it, shows you, and they're within a few degrees of accuracy. He also, with his 8th grade students, measured the speed of light. And he asks a very important question. How many 8th grade students get a chance to measure the speed of sound and the speed of light in their 8th grade science classes? Not many. How did you know about the Klein bottles? But actually, that's a misnomer. I'll tell you why it is in just a second. So, Yeah. Anyway, so if we look at this mantra, imagine, design, plan, make, and play, I think this is the kind of thing that we have to look at when we look at our students, when we look at people, and whether they're our children or whether we're teaching children. But if we look at the last one first, I think this is the most important part of the entire equation there. We no longer teach our children to play. Now, and I put this down here, the bullshit meters are going, shit. My kids go to soccer practice, they go to football practice, they play baseball, hockey, they know how to play. I drag them around all those places. Yeah. Organized sports, nothing wrong with it. They learn teamwork, they get physical activity, and for a lucky few of them, they get opportunities that may not become available to them. How many think, how many parents, have you ever been around one of those, like a football game? How many parents think their kids are going to be like the new starting linebackers for the Patriots? There, one back there. Finally, somebody admits it. Yeah, you've seen that. I have too. Yeah. Boy, somebody's got to learn how to put slides together. But we got to keep organized sports in context because they're not learning to play. They're learning how to do teamwork. They're learning some skills that are important for them to know, but they're not learning how to play, how to create something. How many of those kids that those parents think are going to become starting linebackers actually get an opportunity to go into organized sports, or go beyond organized sports? Well, the odds are definitely not in their favor. Take, for instance, men's basketball. The percent of high school students who get to the NCAA is 3.3%. The number that go from the NCAA to professional basketball, 1.2%. So from high school to professional, 0.03%. You got better odds in craps than you do in becoming a professional basketball player. The best one of all, look at this. Baseball. There you go. 6.8% high school to NCAA. NCAA to professional, 9.4%. Pretty good. High school to professional, 0.5%, 0.5%. But what's the problem with professional baseball? Going to professional baseball is one thing, but getting out of the minor leagues to get into the major leagues is a much bigger whale to eat. And most people never get out of the minor leagues. So perhaps they have to look differently. And if John would hit the buttons in the right direction, I thought I had all those before. There we go. So we're not referring to that type of play, obviously. The kind of play that we're talking about is play that stimulates the child's mind, that inspires curiosity, and that has a fundamental learning component to it. I saw if you go over to Barnes & Noble's, oops, I'm not supposed to mention other sponsors, but go to Barnes & Noble's, what the hell, and get your Starbucks. Got to get my sponsor money. You go to Barnes & Noble's, they're doing a make fair, I think, in November. So they got all kinds of neat little things out there for kids to make and buy, and mostly buy. And but they have these little things called Little Bits. And I had to get one because they're so cool. So basically it's an Arduino-based system that you take the Arduino unit and you have a power supply, you might have a switch, and you have some type of an output, and they all snap together. Got magnets, it's pretty cool. I thought this whole process out. In less than 5 seconds, a kid can take and have a power supply that lights an LED. And you can talk about circuits, you can talk about computing, you can talk about all kinds of different things just in that small thing. But it's built so that kids, little kids, can play with it. They gave the little bits to some graphics designers, and they said, without telling them anything, see what you can design with it. Man, they made some neat stuff all out of paper, cardboard, and then they'd put these units into it, and it had blinking eyes and motion, little robots. It was pretty cool. They even have, they have little motors that you can run off of it, so you can actually build little motorized things. Pretty cool for teaching kids. That's play. But whatever you call it, whether it's tinkering or hands-on exercises or futzing around, whatever you call it, it's something that you want to get kids to stimulate their minds. Because if we're going to get kids to get interested in science, we can't just keep talking to them. We got to let them learn. How many here learned their security stuff by going to school and getting a degree and walking straight into the security program and was successful? One? Cool. I wish I had an opportunity to do it. No, most of us learn by doing something, by playing. You know, I had the best mentor when I worked for EDS many years ago, and as a system administrator. I had the best mentor because his philosophy was RTFM. Read the manual. It's a family show. And then, after you've read the manual, if you still have a question, call me. And when you would call him, he would say, where did you look it up? Yeah, why don't you look in this manual over here? And then call me back if you still have a question. I don't think he ever answered a question I had, now that I think back on it. But I learned more from him than I ever would have, because you learn how to find the right answer yourself. So this brings us back to imagine. And my straight man out here kind of killed the magic a bit, but it's going to cost me. Okay, so let's do a little exercise and imagine. Now these are pointy scissors, so they normally don't let me have pointy scissors, but I got a piece of paper. What's special about this piece of paper, Mr. Klein bottle?
It's got two sides.
Two sides, two surfaces. Two surfaces. So one surface here, one surface here. But I want that tone. That was pretty cool. But if I take this with my pointy scissors that the hospital doesn't let me have, and I give this little thing a half twist, I now have a Mobius strip with how many surfaces? One surface. Magic. It is to some people, believe me. My wife is still, no, it still has two surfaces, one here and one here. No, that one and this one are just one surface. Wait till you see what I have next. Do you think this blew her mind? She teaches science. Anyway. One surface. Okay, neat. That's a whole field of mathematics, topology, that goes into that. If I have this, without the twist, I have two surfaces. I have a torus, basically. Well, you have to actually roll it around to get a torus, but okay, two surfaces. If I take a whole bunch of these, lots of these, and I start attaching them, so I attach one here and one there, one there, one there, one there, I get what's called a kleintje Fläche, which technically does not mean, because the Fläche is actually sometimes a Flasche, which is then the Klein bottle, but it's actually a Klein surface, which looks like this. Now, what's cool about this, gets stuck in there all the time. What's cool about this, how many surfaces does this have? One surface. But it's three-dimensional. It's actually a three-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional Riemann manifold. I don't know how you're going to do that one, but a Riemann manifold. But for purposes of illustration, it's in 3 dimensions. So, but my wife looks at that and she says, no, it has 2 surfaces because I can put water in here and bring it around and the water sits in here. And I keep telling her, no, the water's sitting on the same surface as it was out here. No, she says, no, it's the inside. But if you look on the scale on the side, it says 0 volume. It's a 0 volume, non-orientable Riemann manifold in 2 dimensions, actually. So, interesting. But the neat thing about this is if an ant crawls on this and goes around and around and around, the ant will come back out to the same point, reversed, and never leave, and literally can touch every aspect of the surface without going over an edge. There's no edges, no boundaries. It's a non-bounded entity. So this piece of paper, I'm going to drop that. I'm going to be very upset. This piece of paper has a boundary. Okay, if the ant crawled on this side, he'd have to go over an edge. There are no edges there. There are no edges. Oh, thank you. I hope I didn't need that. And there's no edges on this either, even though it looks like there is. Actually, there is an edge, but that's mathematically irrelevant for the conversation. So, by the way, Cliff Stoll made that. So that's one of his, he is the single employee of Klein Bottle Company, the Acme Klein Bottle Company. And when I was getting ready to do this, I had him send me over one and to use for this. And it's pretty cool. Good, like I said, he's a good guy to get to know. All right, so let's get this going here. Has anybody been to San Francisco's Exploratorium? Do you like it? Do you have fun? Do you have kids with you when you went there?
Actually, I was a kid when I went there.
Oh, right. Cool. And you made it to adulthood. All right. So it's kind of fun. Kids can go in there and do things, man. Touch stuff. Blow stuff up. Well, that was me. Can do stuff. Make a tornado out of water. You can make a tornado out of something. I don't know what it was. But the neat thing is it's also good for adults to get in there and play with because you get to do and see and do things. Now, I think Perot's trying to do something here, but this would be really cool if we could build something like this in North Texas. Have a big exploratorium for kids to go out and just learn about science. Get them interested young. But you take all these interactive experiences and your imagination, and you go into the next step, which is design. So there's a really great example of where imagination crosses the line into design, and that took place in this little house right here in Los Altos, California, where 2 guys named Steve, apparently you had to be named Steve to work for the company, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, built something that looked, well, this is actually the Apple II, but looked something like that. Now, do you think these guys sat there and said, well, let's go down to Micro Center and see if we can get some parts and build a computer? No, they had to figure out what it would be. What was it going to do? What was different about it? And they had to use their imagination to get there. But then they had to go to that next step, which was design and to plan it, to get that thing so that it could be not only something that could be useful and built, but that actually would bring value to people. And for those of you that now have an iPad, an Apple phone, an Apple Watch, if you've gotten that, you know these things are close to being cocaine. You can't get away from them. I don't have it with me. What happens if you if you put your cell phone at home? How many of you, if you were going to work and you left your cell phone at home, would turn around and go get it? Done it many times. Done it many times. So think about that. That all started with an idea, imagination, and some kids that had a thought of what they wanted to do. So the keystone of what we're missing is imagination and design and planning, making, taking that whole process from the start of imagining something and at the end putting it together and making it. And the thing that we're missing, that critical keystone that we're missing in today's educational world is critical thinking. And what do you need to be a good security guy or girl? Critical thinking. Being able to see a problem and react to it. Seeing an issue that has a gap and filling that gap. Not just going down through a checklist and trying to make that checklist look like it's supposed to look. But that's also why I say, maybe we don't need to just have computer science people. Maybe we need to have people who can think critically and bring them into the security profession. So where do we find people? Well, if you ever watched the movie, not the current intern, but there's another movie about Google and its interns. What do? They put them through hell. Okay, you got to design something, you got to promote something, you got to build something, you got to put a website out. And what they're looking for is imagination, resourcefulness, and aptitude. But how many companies do that? How many companies go through that effort rather than, thank God, a warm body walked in? Unfortunately, we have to take the latter position because we're not Google, first of all. And secondly, I was at a job fair over at UTD one time, and I was watching all the students coming in. They were all bringing in their resumes, and Microsoft was there. I was there, and Microsoft was there with all the students. I was there. I had a hot dog and a Coke and went home. No resumes. Because they all wanted to go to Microsoft, or they all wanted to go to the big shops. And they missed an opportunity to work for me. I'm not sure that was good, but what do? We hire interns now, and intern programs are great. But what do? We give them an assignment, and we say, go do this. They do that assignment. We say, cool, that was good. They did the job. Let's hire them. Why don't we take that opportunity to say, hey, let's get all the interns together and have some fun. Give them a problem, something that does nothing to do with work, and see if they can solve it. And let them try to fix that. So we've identified 3 problems in all this. We don't have enough people to fill all the security positions that we have today. The critical thinking skills of many of our applicants is an unknown factor. And our educational system is failing to inspire our children in the sciences. So that's kind of a gloomy picture, isn't it? But if we want to bring all this together, we got to try to inspire kids at a very early age to enjoy science, not only to enjoy science, but to enjoy learning about science, to enjoy learning about any subject, whatever that subject is. We have to help them learn critical thinking skills, and we got to do that by teaching them how to play again. You know, my mom was an old Southern girl, and she had a very simple philosophy. Get your ass out of here and come back at dinner time. So we had to make up our own games. It was like, what do we want to do? You know, we could sat on the porch. We didn't have iPads. Didn't have cell phones. So we made up games. We had all kinds of neat fun. But we learned how to do that. It was just something that you had to learn. I also and I lived in Pittsburgh at the time, so I had like the entire city of Pittsburgh as my playground, which was pretty cool. The 10 to 15-year-old kid and got the whole city to play with. Today, how many people would let their 10-year-old kids get on a streetcar, go all the way to 30 miles downtown, and run around the town all day, and then get back on a streetcar and come home? I don't know. My mom knew I did that, but that's all right. I won't tell her. We have to search out new pipelines for talented people that can mature into talented security people. Maybe we got to look outside of computer science. Maybe we have to look at something else. You know, when I was in graduate school for computer science, you know what most of the majors were? Not computer science. Music. They were music majors. And they were very, very good computer science people. It's a strange connection, but in both mathematics and computer science, a lot of the people were very talented in music. I was apparently the exception. We work with interns. We have to make learning fun for them. Take them beyond projects and help them develop their own thinking skills. Get them a chance to show you their critical thinking capabilities, but make it fun when you do it. We have to stop looking for experienced people only and take a risk. Find somebody, for instance, hey, there's a help desk guy over there who knows a lot about the network. Doesn't have any experience in security. Maybe we can make him a good security person. I did that with one person, and he's very good. Now does computer forensics and incident response for me. So sometimes we just have to take a risk and go for those people who aren't, quote unquote, classically trained. Most of us weren't classically trained, unless classically trained means you just stay long enough in the field, survive, that you become trained. And most importantly, we have to be smarter than a fifth grader. That is, we have to trick them into thinking that science can be fun, and that they can learn something about science without being bored out of their ever-living gourds. Because if just like the Cassini project, if we want to have people in the security field in a few years, we need to be looking back at the middle schools, not the high schools, not the colleges. By the time they get to college, it's too late. So we have to go back to the middle schools themselves. With that, I'm done. So.